Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're exploring a really significant and frankly quite serious legal decision. It comes from the Supreme Court of Seychelles.
That's right.
We're looking at Republic 5 Ken Charles and others. This was decided back in December 2021 and, well, the court charge, it's murder.
And just to be clear for everyone listening, while the case involves several people, we're really zeroing in on one specific part today.
All right,
It's the bail application for Mr. Cindo Cliff Perrick, was the third accused. We want to unpack why the court decided not to release him pending trial.
right.
It's a classic example, really, of that tightrope walk courts have to do, balancing individual rights against, serious judicial concerns, especially in these grave criminal cases.
Absolutely. And our guide for this, our source material, comes from excerpts of a legal podcast script. It's titled Murder Case Bail, Decision Republic v. Ken Charles and Ors 2021. So the aim is to pull out the key legal ideas, the takeaways from this real-world situation. Let's dig in. So let's maybe set the scene first, unpack what happened. At the heart of it all, there's a tragic event, the murder of a man named Benia Passami.
Yes.
And this wasn't just one person accused. There were 4 individuals charged in connection with it. Can you walk us through who was who and what they were accused of doing, particularly Mr. Perek?
Sure. It's quite a cast of characters, legally speaking.
Yeah,
First, you have Ken John Charles and Terry Jules Marie. They were the ones alleged to have actually, carried out the killing directly.
okay, the alleged perpetrators.
Right. Then comes our focus for today, Cindo Cliff Perrick. He's described as a businessman. His charge was counseling and procuring Jean-Charles to commit the murder.
Counseling and procuring. So basically accused of organizing it or encouraging it.
Exactly. Instigating, orchestrating, getting someone else to do it. It's a very serious charge in itself.
Right?
And finally, there was Felipe Pierre. She was charged as an accessory after the fact.
After the fact.
Yeah, meaning he allegedly helped after the crime was committed, specifically accused of misleading the police to help Jean-Charles, one of the alleged killers, get away. So you see, different levels of alleged involvement.
That is a complex picture. And what about the why? Our source mentioned a possible motive, something personal involving Mr. Perek.
It did, and this is often crucial context in understanding these cases. The background provided was that the victim, Benia Passami, had reportedly been, troubling Mr. Perrick's girlfriend. So that provides this alleged personal angle, this potential motive behind why Perrick might have wanted him harmed. It sort of adds a human, though tragic, dimension to the legal arguments.
Right. And connecting Perek, the alleged instigator, to Jean-Charles, the alleged killer, was there any specific evidence mentioned early on?
Yes, a key piece that often comes up in these situations.
Cell phone records. Okay.
The records apparently showed contact between Perrick and Jean-Charles around the time the murder happened. Now, that's not proof of guilt on its own, of course, but for the prosecution,
A link.
it's a significant link. It suggests communication, coordination perhaps, between the person accused of planning it and the person accused of doing it. It definitely helps build their case for that counseling and procuring charge.
Got it. Okay, so with that serious context, let's shift to the bail hearing itself. Mr. Perek wants to be released pending trial. What were the main arguments his lawyers put forward? What principles were they leaning on?
Well, the defense team came out strong, obviously focusing on his liberty. They quite rightly brought up Mr. Perrick's constitutional right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty.
Which is fundamental, right?
Absolutely fundamental. Though it's important, as the court later noted, that being presumed innocent for conviction doesn't automatically mean you can't be detained before trial if there are strong reasons.
Okay, interesting distinction. What else?
They also raised a procedural issue. They alleged the prosecution had been slow, had delayed giving them the case file, the evidence, which, if true, could hamper preparing a proper defense.
Right. Fairness requires timely disclosure.
Exactly. And they also argued that the actual evidence against Mr. Perrick, in their view, was weak. They were essentially saying the prosecution didn't really have a strong case to begin with.
So, presumption of innocence. procedural fairness issues, and attacking the strength of the evidence itself makes sense. But given it's a murder charge, what did they propose to reassure the court he wouldn't, just vanish?
Good point. They weren't just asking for unconditional release. The defense suggested conditions could be imposed.
Like what?
Oh, the standard things, really. Him report to the police station regularly, maybe daily, handing over his passport and any travel documents so he couldn't leave Seychelles.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, measures to mitigate the risk of him fleeing. And their final point was, look, the seriousness of the charge alone, even murder, shouldn't automatically mean no bail, especially if these conditions can manage the risks.
Okay, so that's the defense case for bail. How did the state respond? Why were they so strongly against letting him out?
The prosecution pushed back hard, really focusing on the perceived risks. Their main point was the sheer gravity of the charge Perec was facing, counseling and procuring murder.
Right.
And here's the critical bit, the part that really raises the stakes. That specific charge carries the exact same punishment as murder itself.
Which is?
In Seychelles, that means mandatory life imprisonment.
Mandatory life. Wow.
Yeah. So from the prosecution's view, and likely the court's, that creates an enormous incentive for someone to abscond, to flee rather than face trial. The potential penalty is just so severe.
That definitely changes the risk calculation. Did they mention the evidence again?
Oh, absolutely. They reminded the court about the alleged motive, the issue with the girlfriend, and crucially, those phone records connecting Perec to Jean-Charles.
Right, the link.
But the argument that seemed to carry the most weight, the one they really hammered home, was the practical risk of him fleeing.
How so?
They pointed out that Mr. Perec wasn't just anyone. He was described as an experienced skipper, and significantly, he owned boats.
Ah, so he had the means to leave the islands easily.
Precisely. That was their argument. Had the skills and the resources to potentially slip away from Seychelles if he was released on bail. It wasn't just a theoretical risk. They presented it as a very tangible, practical possibility given his background and assets. Almost like saying he has the motive, the means, and a potential escape route right there.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting then. You've got the defense arguing for liberty, presumption of innocence, conditions, and the prosecution raising the alarm about mandatory life, flight risk, boats. How did the judge, Justice Burhan, actually weigh all this up? What was the core reasoning behind the final decision?
Justice Burhan laid it out pretty clearly. First, he acknowledged the right to liberty. It's in the Constitution. It's fundamental. But he stressed it's not absolute. Meaning it could be limited, specifically when there are substantial grounds to believe detention is necessary before trial. He directly tackled the presumption of innocence argument.
Yeah, what did he say about that?
He explicitly said, look, being presumed innocent for the purpose of the verdict doesn't automatically mean you can't be detained beforehand. It's a crucial distinction. One is about guilt. The other is about ensuring the trial happens, or protecting the public.
So that defense argument, presumed innocent therefore must be free, didn't quite land the way they hoped.
Not in the way they framed it as an absolute bar to detention, no. The court disagreed with that interpretation in this context.
And what about the claim that the prosecution delayed giving them the case file?
The judge looked into that too, and he found actually that the disclosure had been made in good time. The relevant documents had apparently been served 5 whole months before the trial was even scheduled to start.
5 months? Okay, so that argument didn't hold water either.
Seems not. But the real clincher, the finding that seemed most decisive, was the court's assessment of the risk of absconding. Justice Burhan concluded that this risk was real, very real.
And he linked that specifically to?
Directly to Mr. Perec's circumstances, his means owning boats, being a skipper, combined with the incredible severity of the charge and that potential mandatory life sentence. The judge saw that combination as creating a powerful, almost overwhelming incentive to flee.
So the potential penalty plus the practical ability to escape.
Exactly. It wasn't just one thing. It was the combination.
Which leads us to the bottom line. The final decision was,
The Supreme Court declined Mr. Perec's application for bail. They found that substantial grounds existed to keep him in custody on remand pending his trial.
A clear decision based on that risk assessment.
Yes. Justice Burhan basically summed it up by saying that when you put everything together, the extreme seriousness of the charge, the mandatory life penalty, and that tangible risk of flight demonstrated by his means, those factors collectively outweigh the arguments the defense made for his release under conditions. The scales just tipped firmly towards detention in this specific instance.
Right. So let's zoom out a bit. For you listening, maybe you're studying law, maybe you're just interested in how justice works. What are the big takeaways here? What broader legal principles does this Seychelles case really hammer home?
Yeah, connecting it to the bigger picture, I think this case strongly reinforces three really vital points about bail, especially when you're dealing with serious charges like murder.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, that presumption of innocence, while it's absolutely fundamental to a fair trial, it does not automatically prevent pre-trial detention. If the prosecution can show substantial, compelling risks, like a serious flight risk, as argued here, detention can be justified. It's that distinction we talked about.
Right. Innocence for conviction versus detention for practical reasons. Got it. Second point?
Second, courts can grant bail even in murder cases. It's not impossible. But, and this is a big but, they'll only do it if they're convinced that conditions can be put in place that are strong enough, robust enough to genuinely mitigate all the identified risks.
So the bar is incredibly high for the defense in those situations.
Incredibly high. They have to persuade the judge that things like reporting conditions or surrendering passports will truly be enough to overcome, say, the temptation to flee a life sentence or any potential danger to the public.
Okay, and the third principle?
The third is simply how central and incredibly influential the risk of absconding and the seriousness of the offense are in these decisions. When you have a very serious charge with a severe potential penalty and credible evidence suggesting the accused might flee,
That weighs very heavily.
immensely heavily. Those two factors often become the dominant considerations for the judge when balancing everything in a bail hearing. They can easily tip the scales towards keeping someone in custody.
It really underscores that tightrope walk you mentioned earlier. Courts are constantly balancing fundamental rights like liberty against these practical, pressing needs to ensure justice is actually done, making sure people show up for trial, protecting public safety. It's a tough job.
It really is.
Yeah,
And this case is a sobering reminder of how legal systems, not just in Seychelles but globally, grapple with that tension every day. How do you uphold constitutional rights while also maintaining the integrity and effectiveness of the whole criminal justice process? It's a constant balancing act.
absolutely. Which kind of leads to a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe ponder after we finish up here. When you have these situations, serious allegations, real concerns about flight risk, how do we as a society ethically and effectively balance that fundamental right to liberty against the need for safeguards? What does a decision like declining bail in a case like this tell us about our justice systems and what we prioritize, not just in Seychelles, but, everywhere?
It's a profound question. No easy answers.
Definitely something worth thinking about. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into what was, I think, a truly fascinating and important legal decision.
My pleasure.
We hope you feel more thoroughly informed. Until next time on The Deep Dive.